おはようございます。海外難民の妻です。I hated the US so much that I moved out of the country. After living in Japan for a few years, I realized the US was worse than I had previously thought. Why did I move back? That's a good question. After graduating college, I struggled to find a job in my field. I applied to companies big and small and had no luck. Frustrated, I started looking for jobs outside my field of study. That's when I saw a job posting for an English teacher position in Japan. I had never been to Japan. Perfect. I got the job at my first interview. I was on a plane to leave within the month.
Can I change your diaper too?
When I first arrived, I was so excited to be living and working in a new country. I was a little worried about the problems I would have living abroad, but for the most part, I didn't have so many. The company I worked for made the move easy, and my coworkers were really welcoming. The language barrier was a problem at times, but once I started studying Japanese, it became easier. I obviously didn't get very far with my studying. After 3 months, I met Nanmin. I knew on our first date that I would marry him. We traveled together, ate out, and generally enjoyed life. I started to notice I was less stressed. I didn't feel scared walking at night anymore. I could easily save money. It was great. Most importantly, I found someone that I wanted to spend my life with. After about a year of being away, I received the news that my grandfather was not doing very well. He had rapidly advancing dementia. A few months later, my grandmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. That winter, I asked Nanmin if he would move to the US with me. I was thrilled when he said yes. The plan was to move home to spend time with my grandparents. I had always been very close with them. I was worried I was losing my last moments with them. Right before I left, Nanmin asked me to marry him. I of course said yes. I moved back in December of 2018. I got a teaching position within 2 weeks of being home. Things seemed to be going okay with my grandparents. My family was thrilled to have me back. After about 2 months, I found the townhouse that we still live in today. I started working on the application for the K-1 visa that would allow Nanmin to move here. Things seemed to be going really well for a while. I was planning our wedding, spending time with my sister and grandparents, and hanging out with friends. However, I started having pretty extreme reverse culture shock. I started noticing small things that bothered me. People were really aggressive on the roads. Everything was extremely expensive. The food wasn't as good as I remembered. It was all small things, but I really noticed how much I missed Japan after moving back. I could deal with it though. I had a good job, and more importantly, I had my family. Then, I lost my job. My boss told me that they were going to let me go so they could find someone with more experience. That was about the time everything went south. I knew that losing my job would affect the visa. I now had no income to show that I could support Nanmin when he got here. My now ex-boss knew this too, because I had to ask her for proof of employment. She fired me anyway.
See you next time.
I spent the next 3 months searching for a job. All the money I had saved was being wasted on rent and bills. I didn't qualify for unemployment because I had only been at my last job for 5.5 months. qualify, you needed to be at a job for 6. Nanmin was granted his visa during this time. He had limited time to enter the country and for us to get married. We couldn't even celebrate his arrival because we were so stressed. We had a small wedding. It was perfect. I never wanted a big fancy wedding. All that mattered was that we were together, and I had both of my grandparents there. It was the happiest I had been in months, and would be the happiest I'd be for a while. I got a job shortly after we married. It was a job at a law office. I would be a receptionist. It wasn't a great position, and I would be making less money than I had been. But it was a job. During this time, Nanmin wasn't permitted to work. We were told it would only be about 3 months before his working permit came in. It wouldn't come for 8 months. I wasn't making enough at my job to pay the bills. Little by little, my savings was vanishing. I was panicking. But I kept working there because they had told me after 6 months I would get a raise. Then, in March of 2020, we heard about some virus that people were scared about, and they sent everyone home. After about a week of this, they decided that they needed to let people go. I was one of them. During this time, we actually got a letter regarding Nanmin's visa. I didn't have the finances to sponsor his visa anymore, so my mom had to co-sign. It was humiliating. Since everything was in lockdown, I had no prospect of finding a job. I applied for unemployment, and though it took some time, the application went through. Around this time, Nanmin was granted permission to work. While he waited for the union to start hiring, he worked at Home Depot. We were finally paying the bills again. Midsummer, my friend offered me a job at a vineyard. It was a bartending job, so it was easy to pick up and made decent money. Nanmin started working for the union a few months after. Things were finally starting to stabilize. Our job stayed stable for a while. I would be out of work for about a month in the winter due to the vineyard temporarily closing. I decided to take a certification course that would take me about 6 months to complete. At the end, I would have my paralegal certification, and I would start looking for jobs for higher pay and more stable hours. A week into my courses, I found out I was pregnant. That actually meant that I couldn't return to the vineyard because my position required me to do a lot of heavy lifting. Luckily, I still qualified for unemployment. However, it would only last until right around when our son would be born.
Do you have any coupons?
In May, my grandfather passed away. It was really hard on all of us, especially my grandmother. I was sad he would never get to meet his great-grandchild. I completed my courses. We had a healthy baby, but one income wasn't enough. I think you are all familiar with all the jobs he picked up to make sure the bills were paid. My grandmother met our son. She cried while she held him. She told him she loved him. 2 months later, on Thanksgiving, she saw him again. She enjoyed the day with her whole family, but she especially enjoyed her great-grandson. She watched him all day, taking a bath, nursing, and smiling. She passed away early the next morning. I had planned on returning to work after 3 months. I actually did apply for many work-from-home jobs, but either didn't hear back or they were asking me to come in part-time. That wouldn't work, as we didn't have anyone to watch our son. So we struggled. I started working at the vineyard again around April of last year. I couldn't do it all the time, but it did help. However, the vineyard actually closed for good last month and will not reopen. I am now helping out with this channel and it keeps me busy. There is a bit of irony to it actually. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I have been looking for a job. I have been looking for a job in the field I had studied in college. That field is video production. So, I guess I kind of did it through a lot of failure on my part. Eventually, maybe I will have a stable career. Nanmin and I have both worked incredibly hard to be together. He has made a lot of sacrifices for me personally, and also for our family. It has been hard, but I am very grateful. As much as I would have loved to stay in Japan, I am happy I returned home. Family is everything.